Hello everybody, Jordan Nelson here. Today we're going to talk about how to edit a wedding video. So you're all done shooting the wedding, you come home, you sit down, now what? What's the process? What's the most efficient way to do this video so you're not kind of bouncing back and forth all over the place, not knowing what you're supposed to do with your clips, not having a vision as to how you're going to put this whole thing together into a story. You may just be starting out, so I don't know exactly what your experience is in kind of telling this story. So I'm going to go through what I do to quickly and efficiently create these videos while at the same time creating really quality stuff that tells a great story. So I use Final Cut Pro, so a couple things here may be specific to Final Cut, but most of it is just going to be about the process and about what I do to get this video finished. Okay, so steps 1 and 2 are kind of one and the same. You just create your project and then you import your footage. So when I create my project, I usually create a new event. So let's say this is just wedding, and I'm going to be editing on my Samsung SSD 1TB hard drive. So you can kind of look at the specs here. My frame rate I want to keep at 24, so this entire timeline will be 24 frames per second with that resolution. So I go ahead and create that, and then I just name a project, whoever the couple is, whoever I want to name it. So once you do that, it's going to come up something like this. So here's your project here. I've already created a wedding, so I'm using an example for you that I've already done a wedding for. So here's the project right here, and then once you import all the clips, you just click up here and you can find your clips, you'll get this. So that's step 1 and 2. Now what you want to do is just lay all of your clips into the timeline. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a couple things set up here. One of them is this video audio scrub. So you want to make sure that when you're going through, you can scrub through it, and if that's off, you're not really going to be able to see what shots you're going to want to put into your timeline. So step 3 here is just taking all the shots that you like. One big tip here is not to wait forever after you've done the wedding to get started doing the video, because if you wait too long, you're going to start to forget like what shots you got. I always start right after I finish the video. I start to do all this. So I get everything dumped onto my hard drives and I get these things imported and I start laying things in the timeline because I remember like which shots I liked, which shots I took. It's just really fresh in my mind. How you do that here, so I pick this one for example. You just kind of drag and then take this, drag it in. So I just do that for all of these clips. So you can kind of see the yellow boxes. Got some flowers there, got some of the girls, and some shots I didn't use. Some I didn't like, or some I just didn't feel were necessary, I needed at the time. So I just went through. So this is the kind of the long, tedious process that you're going to do. We're going to go through everything and kind of scrub through and see what you like. Another tip here is that when you scrub like this, you can kind of see what shots are shaky, which shots aren't. That's my little brother there dancing. It's good stuff. So let's say, yeah, so I'm kind of moving the camera a lot right there because maybe I was adjusting my grip or kind of moving around, but I don't want to use that. I want to use something that's a little bit more steady, like over here. I'm not moving around as much. So that helps for you to be able to scrub, be like, oh yeah, okay, I don't want that, I'm moving. Okay, this seems a little bit more steady. Now let me go ahead and grab that. Now as I'm laying all these into the timeline, I shot a lot of these in 120 frames per second. So I'm going to want them to be slow motion. When I put them in, they're not going to be. They're going to be in real time. So I'm going to want to go up to this retiming tool here, and I typically go down to custom, and I would make it 20% for those 120 frames per second. So it's 5 times as slow as it was in real time, and that gives you a really smooth shot like that there. So I do that as I lay them in. And then as I'm laying them in as well, I'm kind of retiming them to make sure that they're not like super long, or if my camera ended up being shaky at a point because maybe I laid it in there a little sloppy, then I can go ahead and kind of trim the edges off of that to make sure that the entire clip that's in there right then is smooth and would be permissible to be in the video. If I bang my camera around or something, I'm not going to put that in there anyway. So I'm going to just kind of trim the edges off of that, clean it up a little bit. So that's all part of step 3, laying them into the timeline and getting them in there, slowing the ones down that need to be slowed down. If you're shooting the whole thing in 24 frames per second, you're not going to need to worry about retiming those, so that'll save you a little bit of time there as well. And then just kind of trimming off the edges and making sure it's pretty clean. So step number 4, this is when I kind of reorder my clips to make sure that everything makes sense, because sometimes in the scope of the wedding day, like I might shoot things out of order, like I might do some detail shots after I get some shots of her, but I want those in the beginning kind of a thing. So because I just laid everything, I just went down the line and laid everything into the timeline in the order that I shot them. Now I'm going to want to kind of reorder to make sure sure everything seems to make sense as far as the story goes. So at this point, you have all the clips that you really like. Maybe at this point too, when you were cleaning things up, you're like, okay, that shot actually isn't very good. So you might take some out. But this is the point where it really gets to kind of come together, and you start to see it happen. So those first 4 steps are kind of the most tedious of all the steps. Once you get through that, now you get to have some fun to get some creativity involved with this. So step number 5 is find music. I use Epidemic Sound. Typically the first part of the video is your more acoustic, romantic type, and then once you get into the ceremony, you're gonna kind of get through there and you might have a different song. So I usually have 3 sectioned out portions. I have my getting ready and maybe the pictures beforehand, which is done with the soft romantic, the ceremony, which is kind of a similar type of feel, and then I have maybe a little bit more celebratory if they end up doing after photos or something like that. It's kind of like, yeah, they're married, like this is a celebration, so but not something that's going to be like EDM dance music or something like that. Just more maybe an upbeat acoustic or indie pop or something like that. And then during the reception is typically when I have to get more like party celebration music, maybe some dance music, where everyone's having a good time, things like that. So that's kind of how I section it out. And this is also when I edit to the music. So you want to start at the very beginning, because if you're going to start changing stuff at the end, then it's going to mess up your timing. So I start up here and I start to edit to the music. Here's the actual project that I did. So I had it all edited out right on the beat. So that's step 5 and 6. So 5 being that first song, getting that first one kind of lined up to the beat with the music, and then step 6, adding in those other songs with the beat as well. But you're going to want to start with that first one so you can kind of get the first part of your video sectioned out so that you can start the next sections of that video. Step 7, audio. So if you recorded the vows, or maybe they had some personal messages that they recorded beforehand, that's when you would add that. This particular wedding, they requested just doing music over top, which is great, but at that point, that's when you would put it in there. It depends on the wedding, but I usually do it kind of during the getting ready portion, when it's kind of showing them, the guy's putting on his suit and she's getting ready with her girls or something, is when that I would play that over the top of that section. But it can vary, you can put it whenever you want. Step 8, color grading is what I would typically do next. So I would go ahead and head over to my effects here, and I use Pixel Film Studios. So go ahead and I usually drag it onto a clip that I feel like is kind of representative of the video, and then I'd go ahead and this is the one that was on there already. So this is what it looks like adding it on there. But I went ahead and used one of their presets, turned up the saturation a good bit. Just with the picture profile I used on my camera, it's pretty desaturated, so I bumped that up. As you can see before here, if I take this out, this is what it looks like, and this is what it turned into. Now, when you're editing, on my computer especially, like, it looks a lot more saturated in Final Cut Pro than it does when you export it and watch it in QuickTime or watch it on YouTube. Like, this little screen looks very, very vividly colorful. It gets a little bit less so once I export it, at least to my eye. And then what I typically do is I just copy, so Command C, and then I select all the other clips, and then I Shift Command V, and I go ahead and I don't want to do any of that, and then I would paste just my color grade there, and I would paste it. I'm not going to do that now because I already have. And then I would go through all of them, make sure that they all fit. So some might be darker, some might be brighter, some might already be, maybe have more vivid colors and want to scale it back or dial it up, something like that. So then I go through all of those and tweak the colors to make sure that they all look pretty good. And now the very last thing that I do is I put in the titles. So right here, I just had my Ethan and Ashley kind of underneath the rings there. A lot of times I center it up, but for this beginning shot, the rings were in the middle. I didn't want to cover it up with the title, so I stuck the title in there. You just go up to here, and I just go basic title, I drag it in, and then I just create that. I really like the font, whatever this is called, Shri Devanagari 714. I use that one, whatever that's called, I don't know. And then I letterbox. So I would take the first clip, see before, if I turn off letterbox, it looked like this, and then if I turn on, so I would go to effects over here, make sure I'm selecting all video. I'll go letterbox, and then I would go ahead and drag it onto the clip, which I'm not gonna do that because I already have it. And then I change the aspect ratio once it's on that clip to 235. And then what I go to do is I go through every single clip and offset if I need to. So let's say this one, I think I had to do something with, yeah. So this one was a little too low. It was cutting off their heads when it was just at 0.0. And I just kind of move every clip to make sure that I get a good shot. And having to adjust that will especially happen if the bride and groom are a lot different in height, because you'll cut off the guy's head a good amount of time. So yeah, once you go through all of those clips and make sure the letterbox isn't cutting off anyone's head and that you're getting the subject of the shot, then you just kind of go over and look over, make sure everything looks smooth, the music is lined up, the color grading looks good, just retouch everything, and you're all done with your video. Then you go ahead and export, master file. The very last step here, you want to make sure that you go to settings over here and change it to better quality, not faster encode. And then click next, and then you save it, and there you are. That's your video. All right, just to summarize the 10 steps here, just creating your event and project, importing that video, laying the clips in the timeline and retiming them and cleaning them up a little bit, reordering the clips in a way that makes sense for the video, finding your music and laying that music into the timeline. That first song is what you want to start out with, and then the next step, just repeating with the other songs in the next sections of the video. Step 7 being the audio, so placing the audio of the vows in there. Step 8, color grading your footage. Step 9, getting the letterbox and the titles placed in there. And then last step, just exporting it. They're all set. All right, that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.